it would not be an emergency preparedness conference in Arizona if we didn't talk about the heat. So with that said, I'm just going to read the text that Jeff gave me on this one. I'm not going to ad-lib this. Even though we are just separating from one of the hottest summers on record, we wanted to bring in an expert to talk to you about this important subject. Jennifer Botsford is the Bureau Chief, Resiliency and the Environment for the Arizona Department of Health Services. So we have a true expert in the house today. Jennifer, take it away.
Hello? Okay, this works. All right, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today about heat. I've been with our agency since 2005, working in all different topics in environmental health, and heat is one of those topics. So, let's see. Okay, so you guys all know that last year was a record-breaking year for heat. We had 51 consecutive days, over 110 degrees, and that spurred a lot of action from our governor and from our state agencies to respond to heat in a more coordinated way. But that work really has started for a couple of decades with lots of different agencies and organizations around our state. And so we knew we weren't starting from scratch. We wanted to find a way to call on all of our partners and the experts to hear from our community, how can we best address heat? What are the low-hanging fruit we can start with this year? And then what do we need to expand to and improve for future years? I did want to stop and mention that last year, around 990 people died from heat. And we know that the majority of those people have lived in Arizona for more than 20 years. So it's not necessarily the tourists. We're all vulnerable to heat, and we can all find ourselves in a situation where we could become vulnerable. Even though we think we know this heat, we deal with it every summer, we could still become vulnerable. We have lots of partners that work with us more directly on our BRACE grant, which is the Building Resilience Against Climate Effects. It's a grant from the CDC, and we focus on things more than just heat, so wildfire smoke and things like that as well. So like I mentioned, I wanted to build on the existing partnerships and work with our partners to inform our ADHS heat plan, which would in turn also inform the state heat plan. And we wanted to engage our partners in what Arizona should prioritize, and we wanted to dream big. So one thing we do in government is, I can't do that. I'm overwhelmed. This is my capacity. I can't do any more. And we wanted to approach this as not what has been done, and this is what we're doing, and we're doing enough, but what would that world look like if we didn't have barriers? Like, what would we want to do to reduce the risk of heat and the burden on disease and illness in our state? So in our agency, we called on all of our experts across our agency, so that included environmental health, public health emergency preparedness, our communications team, our vital statistics team, Office of Strategic Initiatives, Office of Health Equity, and our bioinformatics group. And so we had quite a big group of people inside of our agency that have worked on heat and data and communications, and we brought them all together and said, how are we going to get the information from our community partners as well so we can form this plan? So we decided to host a summit, and so we got this ask in the middle of August to have a draft plan to the governor's office in the middle of December, and we wanted to convene our partners somewhere in there, get their voices, document those, and then write this plan. And so with only a few weeks notice, our FEP team was miraculously able to put together the logistical part of the summit, and we had over 150 participants from all of these agencies who showed up on that day to give their input. So the day of the summit, we wanted to find out what was happening statewide already with heat, and what else can we be doing. We we wanted to make sure that voices were heard and people had a space to contribute what their area of expertise is. And we focused our conversations around 5 breakout areas: data to enhance heat resiliency, communicating to promote heat resiliency, heat relief coordination, building a strong infrastructure, sustainability policy and innovation. And we separated the day into 2 different sessions. The morning session, we had focused conversations. And the afternoon session, we had idea generation and prioritization. So in the morning, we had table discussions. Sorry, I have to get closer so I can read. What is already in place and we want to keep doing? What are the challenges and barriers that we have been experiencing, and what previous lessons have we learned? What are the areas of improvement, or what recommendations do our partners have that are needed for success? And focus those around those topic areas, those 5 topic areas. And then at the end of that morning session, we had our partners, somebody from the table just report out what their discussion was about. And we had, go back. Okay, so we had a facilitator from OSI, and that was very important to us, to have someone who is not a subject matter expert facilitate the conversation, so that that individual didn't unknowingly drive the conversation, but it gave more space for all the voices to be heard. In addition, we had a note taker at every table, again, so the subject matter experts could just focus on free-flowing ideas and not have to worry about taking notes and that formal part of it. In the afternoon, we talked about what actions our agency or others, our partners, are needed for successful, whatever, fill in the blank topic, in building and supporting heat responses and resiliency in Arizona. So we had individuals brainstorm on their own and then share with their table and then generate more ideas that way, build off of each other's ideas, and then discuss it in an open brainstorm. And then we grouped those ideas and came up with some general categories. And so we didn't want people wordsmithing. We can work on that when we get back. You don't need to find the perfect way to say something. We're just trying to get everybody's ideas on paper as fast as possible. Again, we had a facilitator and note takers in the room. So this is just one example. So going into the day, we gave some ideas in the data group. We think maybe you want to talk about these things. And this list of topics was just to get their mind going, give them something to start with. And then they worked through the day and they came up with these main categories: consolidating and managing data, analyzing data, building capacity, engaging community and decision makers, and translating data into action. And that came from this list of activities that they thought were priorities for our state. So we took all that information and we held our first summit on October 30th. And November 7th, 1 week later, we reported out. We organized all of those notes and we reported out to our community. This is what we heard you say, and we are going to continue the conversation in work groups. So we wanted to further refine those activities, like, okay, what are the exact steps we need to do? What are the partners we need to engage, and who might be missing from the table that wasn't able to come to that summit at such short notice? And then we worked on our report and we submitted it to the governor's office December 15th. And this report was the governor's office report. It was released on March 1st. And in this report, it focuses on 4 main areas: so shelter, energy, health, and disaster response. And that's for the summer 2024. And then it also talks about long-term recommendations around safe and affordable housing, adapting and updating emergency response, improving our cooling center networks and supporting the cooling centers, and improving data sets, knowledge, and workforce development. This is our report from the Arizona Department of Health Services, and we released this a couple weeks later to the public, and these are the final list of 12 recommendations and goals. So the goals of driving heat relief activities, reducing heat-related illnesses and deaths, preparing for extreme heat, and fostering innovative solutions. And we we knew when we published this report that we had a lot of work to do and we weren't going to be able to do it all ourselves. And so we enlisted our partners to join us in work groups. And so this summer we worked through quite a bit of those activities, and the other state agencies that were also tasked with work around heat had their own work group as well. That was led by our Chief Heat Officer, Eugene Levar. So this website here, azdhs.gov/extreme heat prep, documents kind of what I just went over with what's in the state heat report, the ADHS heat report, and the work groups. And it will link out to our regular heat page where it's all our heat safety information. And on there we have toolkits for older adults, kids, tons and tons of information, and lots of data. So here's two pretty cool websites we have. One is on cooling centers. So if you work with populations that maybe find themselves in situations where they are unable to pay for their air conditioning or they're losing their home, there are cooling centers around the state, but a lot more frequently in Maricopa County, Pima County, I think Gila County, La Paz, Yuma County. So a lot of the counties around the state are starting to host cooling centers. They map them, and then we show them on our website. So you can direct people here. And then we have data dashboard. So right now we have heat-related illness. It's syndromic surveillance, meaning somebody goes into the hospital and they say, I'm having these symptoms, and then that gets reported to us. So it doesn't take the time to diagnose and verify and all that stuff. So this is real-time data. It's not perfect, but it shows us kind of how things are happening in the community. One thing we worked on this summer is a heat and medication information sheet for healthcare providers. So we worked with the Poison Control Center, U of A, and Pima County Health Department to develop this, and it is designed to be something very specific that providers can do when they are working with populations that take medications to verify if that medication may make someone more vulnerable to the heat and the symptoms of heat. So that's the first page, and then there's also a page of all the medications that CDC has mentioned or other entities that we were able to compile. So that's the gist of what I have, but if you guys have any questions about heat or our process on how we were able to work with our partners and incorporate their voices into our heat report, I'm happy to take any questions.
Have you addressed access to water?
Access to water. I don't think we have specifically. Great point. I think at the cooling centers, we do have we have hydration stations and cooling centers, and so the cooling center should be providing water. So it kind of comes up, obviously, but as far as like people having trouble paying water bills or something like that, I don't think we've talked about that. Yes.
Do you have a question?
Hi, Phil Donahue.
There you are.
Hi.
Gets that.
Hi. The cooling stations that you talk about, can you tell me just a little bit about that? Like how long can a person stay there? What do they have? And just maybe give me an example. I don't know what those are exactly.
Yeah, so the broader term is heat relief center, and a cooling center is specific in that. So a heat relief could include someplace where you can just go in and get water, or you can go in and get out of the heat for a little bit, but you have to stay awake and sitting or standing. A cooling center, hopefully you have a little bit more freedom to stay as long as you need. They're only open for business hours, so it's usually like a library or some other business that has opted to be a cooling center, so a government building or a private business, and generally open until 5 o'clock, which can be problematic. So there are a few that are open until 7, and so Burton Bar Library I think is 24/7, and there's a couple that are like that. There's these cooltainers, which the state came up with, which is like a converted converted shipping container, and it just has an air conditioner and folding chairs, and you can come in and sit down as long as you want. But some of them you can actually lay down. You are not going to get kicked out for that. Some, they kind of make sure that people are not falling asleep. They have to make sure people aren't actively using drugs on site, but they don't make them leave if they're loopy or whatever. Like if they're high or whatever, they're not kicked out. They're welcome to come in, but they can't like cause trouble and they can't actively be doing drugs. So there's like rules around that. There's security. Yeah.
Sure. I have a question. So I don't expect you to have all the data memorized, but I was wondering what data categories you're tracking so that I could identify which groups I should be targeting in my community.
Yeah.
I believe the 2011 to 2021 report said Yavapai County had approximately 20 heat-caused deaths. So I don't know whether those are people getting off on a hiking trail in Sedona that are tourists. I don't know if in Prescott we have a really big recovery community there. Is it something where they don't have some place to go and it's people that are on the street who are having trouble with substances? And with the finite resources of a more rural county, I don't really have the resources to address all of those. So knowing which groups are the main ones will be incredibly important for us to target.
Very good question. So we get a lot of our specifics data like that from our county medical examiner's office. So in Maricopa County and then Pima County, which Pima County services 5 other counties around them, we have very good data on the sorts of situations people find themselves when they succumb to heat. So are they alone? Is their air conditioner working? Were they homeless? Were they indoor? Were they outdoor? We have data on if they're older adults and that sort of thing. So what Pima County found working with their medical examiner is that the majority of deaths are people who live alone, who are found alone when they're dead, and they're older adults. Maricopa County finds that a lot of the individuals dying from heat are homeless, which we don't have that in our data set. So in our data set, we know that around 50% of the deaths statewide have some sort of substance use when they died. So I think in general, we know that it's gonna be adults, people who have lived in Arizona for quite a long time, and it can be people that were on trails. We also know from science that if there's a heat warning today and a high heat event today, you may not see people in the emergency room until tomorrow or the next day. And so there's this time frame where either people think they can get over it and then they don't, and then they reach out for help, or something's happening there where they're not able to recover and they have to seek help later. But if you want more information about Yavapai County directly, you can feel free to contact me and we will see what we can find for you specifically. But yeah, Yavapai I don't have in my head because we haven't been working with the Yavapai County Medical Examiner's Office yet. So
Okay, I'm planning an emergency exercise with them soon. I'll ask them.
great.
Okay.
We're part of COPA's street outreach navigation team over here. The question that she asked, Mesa was surprisingly not on your list, but they have a respite center. It's 10 to 7. They have 40-something cots, tables, TV. They tried to make it more of a rec center. They do have security, smoking areas, and everything else for people. We have a lot of people who come in to keep their electricity bills down, but the majority of the clients that we meet with are individuals, members, are people who are homeless or underhoused.
Yeah.
And it's on the corner of Stapley and Main. And they have laundry and shower services over there too. Food all day, hot meal at 1 o'clock.
Yep. Yeah. To your point. Yeah. Some of the cooling centers offer meals as well. Not all of them, but some of them do. So Maricopa County, Maricopa Association of Governments, MAG, has a website, and on their website for the cooling centers, it has like when they're open, when they're closed, what holidays they're closed for, things like that. So, and our website tries to mimic as much of that information as possible, but I think there might be a little bit more like, can you bring your pet? Things like that are on the MAG's website. Yeah. Yeah.
They can bring their animals there.
Awesome.
And it's the cutest darn thing to see cats on leashes.